Ladies and gentlemen of Michigan Writers, welcome to Brilliant Books. Thank you so much for showing up on a beautiful Sunday afternoon for what I'm sure is going to be a fabulous time. As I never tire of telling this particular audience or versions of it whenever we launch a June's Review here, and I'm proud to say I think we've done that for the last 7 years, which is extraordinary. This is genuinely one of my favorite events. I think the whole provenance of how this comes about, the various submissions that come from literally all over, the extraordinary work that these guys do editing that into a journal, and people only being here on merit is really the thing that makes it quite an excellent and unique event. And the fact that we have so many people here reading their work, I think is an absolute joy. So for those of you who maybe didn't come for the event and are here shopping and want to join in, you're in for an absolute treat. Because the level of work here is really quite extraordinary. And do make sure that you grab yourself a copy of the book, the June's Review, on the way out. We also have loads of the previous issues, I think going back to number 12. So we have an awful lot of them. So please do help yourself to those. But without further ado, I will hand it over to you guys, because it is, after all, your event. Thank you, and welcome to my store. Cheers. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Welcome, everyone. I am Jennifer Kirkpatrick Johnson, and I am the president of Michigan Writers, which means that I am a friend of all of you, because you are either members or people who are reflecting back as listeners or supporters of our contributors, who I'm very happy to have many of here today. There are some board members from Michigan Writers in the audience, and if you will either stand or raise your hand, whatever you are most comfortable with. Please make sure you stop and visit them. They're all very lovely people to have in this organization supporting our membership. A special thank you to Peter and to Brilliant Books for having us. This is really a wonderful place to be. And if you have, thank you. If you have not already received a little form to fill out for a drawing for Brilliant Books, please come and see myself or Mandy, who's in red. And then I'm going to check my notes to make sure I did everything I said I would do. That is it. Thank you so much for being here, and you are here to hear other people besides me, so I will exit the stage. Thank you. Tanya.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. I can't say enough about what an honor it is to be editing this journal and reading the work that's been coming from all over the country and all over the world. And thank you again so much for coming in the afternoon, our new time. We wanted to honor Jim Harrison last night, so this is a new time slot for us, and we have a great crowd here. I just wanted to, this is my second issue as the editor, and I've just been amazed at just the increasing number of submissions we've been getting, and the wonderful, amazing work that we have the privilege of reading and publishing. And I really can't thank everyone enough for being here and for sending us your lovely work. And I also wanted to thank our editorial staff of readers, without whom we couldn't do this. Our readers are Kevin Avery, I don't know if Kevin's here, Melissa Fournier, Nathan Holtree, Larry Nairn, John Paul, and Sarah Wangler. So they really helped me get through a very busy season for us. And our next round of submissions actually opens up on November 1st. So we'll be reading for another 3 months. So I'd welcome and encourage everyone to send your work. And if you have any questions, feel free to come talk to me afterward. So I will read my editor's note. I always love writing these for each new issue. They're all different. So, okay. Each time I sit down to sequence the works we've selected for the new issue of June's Review, I never know how it all will come together. I spread the papers out. I reach for one, then another across the table. Fan out short stacks. Leave some pieces solo for the moment. I remember a teacher who had us constantly pushing our desks around the room. You, go over there. You, come sit with her. Sometimes we clicked, and sometimes not. But I like to think we were at least curious about each other. And so it goes with writing, where our disparate ideas, images, and sounds can talk among themselves. But do they? Maybe they're competing, sneaking around one another, plotting maybe. As my paper stack matured this summer, it grew taller, messier. It rustled like poet Kathleen Balma's cornfield. Who will save you from the Frankenstalks? She asks. Conflict in many forms, familial, marital, inner, and generational among them, became one of this issue's prominent themes. Even the spirit world, for instance, has its generational tensions. Time and experience factor in. You could say younger ghosts have spent time in the afterlife. For their elders, it's time times two. George Looney writes, "The older dead think they know better, and tisk the ghost children." And certainly inner conflict emerges over scarce resources, such as the newborn babies of Amy Vandenberg Fant's story. We read because we are acquisitive, and because we are uncomfortable. Is it possible to be close to someone when your pleasures are so wildly at odds? Svetlana Beggs wonders in her story, Made in USSR. Yes, I do think being at odds makes for closeness. It's fascinating to move unlike things into close proximity and see what develops. As poet Jim Zola imagines, there is indeed a Friday after the end of the world. And I will share with you what Friday after the end of the world looks like. I'm going to read Jim Zola's poem. Friday after the end of the world. All there is left to eat is pumpernickel. Pumpernickel muffins, pumpernickel bread, pumpernickel bagels. The sky can't make up its mind. Leaves still waltz, some hint at a tango, down to pavement that peaks up at the indecisive sky. In between is akin to disaster, if disaster were a ginger with lacy sleeves and a ring on every toe. The next poem I'm going to read is from one of our contributors who is from California and wanted to be here but couldn't make it. And interesting fact, we have the majority of our contributors are from Michigan, but we receive so much work from all over. I'm proud to say that we are publishing the work of people from 20 different states and the country of Cyprus. So, yeah, we never know what's going to come in. So anyway, this poem is by Abby Kaplan. She is a doctor out in California, and it is called The Resistance. Last week I hopped in the car with my daughter, and we drove to Four Corners. Got a blessing from a medicine woman who decorated our Civic and peace paint and sent us packing to the border, where we picked up a traveler from one of the First Nations of Mexico who burned sage in the back seat to cover our tracks. We made it to Taos, where we lathered ourselves in sunlight, bought some pottery, and packed it in yesterday's newspaper filled with insults, and we all broke down by the side of the road. My daughter spoke of the resistance, and I asked which one. Maybe she was talking about Nicaragua, when I wet 22-cent stamps with a sponge, pressed them onto envelopes to stop the government from killing Sandinistas. She said, "No, it's the resistance. I don't know anything about the Sandinistas." We drove to Washington, D.C., waving our hands through the sage haze so we could see the road, stretched our legs at the Museum of Tolerance, looking for whales. But they were beached on the bleached coral off Australia, and we couldn't see them even as we searched later through binoculars from the Staten Island ferry. We squished through the mud of Manhattan, cramming potato niches into our mouths. People, the living and the dead, avoided us because we smelled like creosote from the Sonoran Desert. Everywhere we went, we asked, where do we find the resistance? Unhelpful locals kept pointing us further down Fifth Avenue to where the cafes in the village were closed for lunch. So we went to Wall Street, where I taught a chorus of sparrows how to tweet banks of marble. And with the quarters we collected from pitying passers-by, we called up Robert Reich, but he'd left a voicemail saying he was out looking for us. Well, thank you, everyone, and this will get. So we'll get started with our reading.
So as Tanya already said, I'm Larry, and I'm going to read Jeff Ewing's poem, another California poet who couldn't be here, unfortunately. This is Under the Bear Flag. The last grizzly on the last green patch in the state. One wild eye, tongue lolling, parched beneath a blood-red star. For every blue lake, a heron falls. For every mountain, a gutted deer. From sleep to waking, the insect hum of restlessness. We find ourselves by misfortune here with skin bepuckered as pork cracklins, having heated slack-jawed to charlatans. But innocence is our conscience's redoubt. So let us now prepare the ground we promised Marshall's ghost to prepare. We'll decant from Ishi's tears a killer IPA, whose bitterness will transmute on our tongues this bloodlust to post-coital ambrosia. California, we throw ourselves with devotion on your blazoning shoreward fire, and watch through that wild eye the ashes drift like seed across bone-fertile fields. We paw the black ground and howl our loss, wrapped to every blue lake, every gutted mountain.
Hello, I'm Pat Trenacost. I'm glad to be here, glad you're all here. I'm going to read a short story. It's called Pug and Wooly, and I guess I have a little bit longer to read, but I want to, if I have to end it, I want to end it at a cliffhanger, so you'll want to go and read the rest of it. But maybe, Tanya, you could give me a sign at the, like if I'm going too long, because I don't want to read too fast. Okay. Pug and Wooly. When Ken Wolchek rolled over in bed on Tuesday morning, his old wife rolled with him. He was a huge man, still 6'4" at 76, and nearly 300 pounds. She was an itty-bitty thing. Pug, he'd started calling her years ago, instead of Peg or Peggy. Her name, of course, was Margaret Jean. Only yesterday she'd thrown her hairbrush at him to get him to stop, but it was no use. Too many things about her annoyed him, especially now that she was crooked from the waist up, skinny and folded in half. Plus, he said the red dye she used on her bangs made her look like she had shingles. So he called her Pug to get even. It wasn't kind. In less than 9 hours, he'd go back to calling her Peggy. She knocked her little fist on his back. Her nightgown was caught under his girth. "I'll flatten you," he warned. The bouncy mattress shook when he laughed. He could do it, steamroller her with a quarter turn. "Wooly, goddamn you, get off me." That's what everyone called him, Wooly, a take on Wolchek. Her nightgown was hot pink, spun of some kind of synthetic fabric, and about to take her life. And so began their day, normal enough at the start. He put one paw on the floor, swung his opposite leg wide, and vaulted himself over the side to his knees, then pushed off with both hands to get upright so he could grab his walker. Despite the tennis balls on the front legs, the device careened under his weight, and he rolled with it downhill to the dresser, his cigarette pouch spinning over the front bar and dumping his smokes. That part of their trailer wasn't even. Pug howled, "Look who's getting flattened." He glowered at her. She glowered back. They put on yesterday's clothes. She dressed carefully, though, caressing her youthful, unblemished hands with lotion from the dollar store, massaging her long, tapered fingers one by one, slipping six rings on, the faux turquoise, the cameo, the opal, the triple coil, the silver braid, and lastly, on her right forefinger, the Victorian amber showstopper with the filigree. She drew her comb down her red bangs 5 times, trimmed a straggler with her shears, blew it off the mirror where it stuck on some old hairspray. They grabbed a couple egg and sausage combos from the toaster oven and a thermos each of thick coffee. The house smelled of last night's frozen pizza rolls, the air freshener, and Woolie's habit. Pug divvied up 8 pieces of Wrigley's spearmint between them as Woolie lipped a cigarette, winking at her while chewing the sweet coating off the gum. Stretching as far as she could, Pug held the lighter to his mouth, though her elbows were cramping. Giant hands on his walker, he leaned down to her. "Put some shoes on," he said. "You don't have any shoes on. Didn't you notice?" The cigarette flexed up and down in his mouth like an Olympic high diver. "Oh," she giggled, "right." Before they could board their van, Pug was determined to get control of her cushions. The ruffled one with the chrysanthemum pattern was stuck in the bucket seat, and the other was wedged way down in the console. No sooner did she squeeze in under the steering wheel, the first one shifted out of place. Her arms were too weak to hold herself up long enough for Woolie to stuff it where it belonged, so she exited the van on her butt, feet first, like a kid coming off a slide, and repeated the drill. If it weren't so exhausting, it might have been fun. Turning the jangle of keys in the ignition, she put the maroon 40 Econoline in gear and pulled onto the rural highway. They did not stop for gas, although the fueled light was blinking. They'd fill up on the way home from the resale shop where they worked, use cash from the till, or at least put a couple bucks in. It usually worked out. "What are you poking along for?" She didn't answer. She adjusted her ringed fingers on the fleece-wrapped steering wheel and stared ahead. It was still dark, and there could be deer. They both scanned the road for the 20-minute drive. Her, the left side, him, the starboard. When she pulled into the lot, the back right tire caught the curb, and they both bounced in their seats. "Shit," Woolie said. He gestured to the back, behind the row of cement block stores where they parked every day next to the dumpster near the loading door. With their plastic grocery bags slung over their wrists, they got themselves out and onto their feet, the walker bouncing out the sliding door like an excited terrier. Woolie stopped to light up, making Pug wait because there was no smoking in the store, and he had the keys in his pockets still. "Jesus," he made a face. Cantaloupe rinds and fish garbage from the takeout next door were ranker than usual. "Ready?" he asked, as if she were the one holding up the show. She flicked a finger at the lock, the white of one of her eyes glinting in the halogen sheen. While Pug turned on the fluorescent tubes, Woolie parked himself in his overstuffed chair, right behind an antique smoking table loaded with hard candies and a liter of Faygo. The aisles were otherwise interrupted with resale goods, end tables, lamps, restaurant carts of mismatched flatware, record albums, vacuum cleaners, velour Afghans screen printed with horses and dogs faded from the glare of the plate glass, one worn-out couch, ice skates, the Christmas section with the flattened fake pine ropes, Santa heads, and manger sets missing their pieces. A decal on one wall said, "Resell, recycle. Everybody wins." Another, "Share the luxury." A third, "The devil wears resale." It would never occur to them that today they'd need one saying, "Don't even try it." Pug's favorite section was the dolls. "Them dang things don't need no going over, do they?" Woolie tried to give orders. "You never mind what does and don't need going over, old man, or I'll let you know what's what myself," without looking at him. "Come over here and fix this thing." He couldn't free the register key from his key ring. The blade was stuck inside the bow cap to his house key. She scuffed over to him, took the fat key ring from his hand, shook it a couple times. "There." He laughed, and that made her mad because she knew he did it on purpose, just to keep her from playing with her dolls. "Buzz off," she groused. Pulling a handy wipe from the cylinder, she got busy polishing each doll's face till it shined. She tipped the little women and children upside down to make their eyelids blink properly. She fluffed their pinafores and pulled at their elastic waist and neck bands. I am going to move ahead a little bit. Sales that morning were slow. Then, just before noon, a skinny young man in a flannel shirt and bandana brought his selection to the register. "Listen," Pug said, looking up from between her raised, caved-in shoulders with that sweet twinkle in her eye, gum popping girlishly in her back teeth. "How would you like a small lot price break?" He squinted his approval. With her long, glitzy fingers, she lined up his items. An old but unopened Craftsman screwdriver set from the 80s, a How to Prune Your Evergreens manual, and a Jethro Tull long-playing record. Clicking her painted nails along the glass front case, letting them frolic on the adding machine keys like little tap dancers. The fellow squinted harder, but didn't seem to catch on that the bundled deal cost more than the asking price of each sold separately. Steve and Tammy wouldn't catch on either. The next customer in line said, "Nice rings," and added, "What is that perfume? It takes me back." And I'm going to move a little bit forward again. When a woman came in around 5 with her father or husband, who could say these days, Wooly coughed and blew his nose. Still, the woman haggled, so he cracked the door behind him to let in the alley odors. She paid Pug 50 cents extra. "Keep it." Wooly rolled his lips into a smile of sorts, thumbed at his chest. Pug didn't give him any satisfaction, though she was pleased. Rarely did anyone worse off than him come in, yet on that particular day someone did, right at dusk, with a gleaming 8-inch dagger that reflected the buzzy fluorescent lighting from tip to heel. The blade was out of its sheath. The cutter was an Elk Ridge gut hook hunter's knife. "We only sell on consignment," Wooly croaked from his upholstered wingback. Pug didn't like the look of the owner either. Creepy as sin, the kid laid the gut hook on the counter and turned her back to Wooly, with her elbows on the glass so she could watch the door. She was wearing a tight skirt that barely crested her fanny and high-heeled boots with chains around her ankles. She had on a bright yellow fake leather jacket with fake leather fringe, a badly dressed Barbie doll. "Pug, dear, come out here," Wooly called over his shoulder to her, where she was in the hall behind him. About to emerge, she stopped. He had called her dear. Either Steve and Tammy had also shown up, or they were about to be robbed. To get her bearings, she stayed where she was and watched from behind a stack of roll-up window shades. The bells on the front door rang a second time, and another woman, older than the first, stormed in. She was so full of tattoos, Pug thought she was wearing a floral shirt. No, just a skimpy T-shirt and short shorts that showed too much of what was and wasn't artful on her body. "That don't belong to you," this one yelled. Keeping her back to Wooly, the kid slid the deer gutter a little to the left so the other woman could see it better. "Too late, Mom," she taunted. "I already hocked it." She turned her face toward Wooly and winked at him. Pug saw him wink back, the buzzard. A scam was going down. She, Pug, wanted in on it. Is that good? More? Okay. That was one of the cliffhangers. "You can't do that, April. That was your brother's. Never did nothing for me. You don't know. You don't know the half of what he done for us, April. Now I want that back." "Told you, too late. I already hocked it. You want it, you got to pay for it now. It belongs to the old man." She gestured to Wooly, who had not yet gotten out of his chair, looking decidedly passive, as if he was watching bad TV. A kid hustling her own mother. "Pug, honey," he said again, with that lonesome tone in his throat. The daughter turned and started spinning the knife atop the chest-high glass case, like she was trying to amaze an audience. The tattooed woman took a few steps forward, her hand clutching at the knife from afar, as if trying to stop a disaster mid-air. The younger one kept swatting the wooden handle. She seemed mesmerized by the power of her hand and the flash of the blade, till it got going so fast it whizzed like a boomerang off the counter. It spiraled through the air, spearing the center of the teal-blue paisley pattern behind Wooly's head and piercing his left ear and a way that left a small flap hanging. He was too surprised to bleed. "Ouch!" he bellowed. Pug flung herself out of the back hall like a hawk. Barbie doll looked frightened and suddenly very sober. "Get out!" Pug shouted. "Both of you." "I have to have that blade," the mother cried. "It's not hers to sell. My son, it's his." "Then you buy it back," Pug said evenly, not even looking at her husband, who by now was bleeding and reaching for his Faygo, nor did she so much as glance at the daughter. "How much?" The woman seemed desperate, more terrified, Pug thought, of leaving the place without the deer knife than of what her stupid kid had just done. 40. Pug felt Woolie's private smile tug on her right between her shoulder blades. "Ooh," he kind of moaned. 45, Pug said. The girl, April, pouted her lips, then offered a stream of laughing sounds. Was April happy with this result? Hard to tell. Like a young Sophia Loren, the mother strode through the islands of golf bags and patio umbrellas, all undulating hips and simmer. She flattened her palm on the glass so hard the girl jumped inside her high steppers. Beneath the woman's hand was a $50 bill. President Ulysses S. Grant's somber image face up. Pug grabbed it, held it to the light, still not looking at Wooly, not even when he said quietly, "My ear is cut off." Once tilted, the bill revealed the watermark and USA 50 in the thread. After she put the grant in the register, Pug stepped over to the upholstered chair, pulled the knife out of the headrest like it was Excalibur, and handed it to the mother. "Get out." Pug narrowed her eyes and shook her head. "No." Oh, sorry. The bells on the door rang as the women left. Just before exiting, little Miss mouthed, "I'll be back," and rubbed her fingers and thumb together, presumably for her cut. Pug narrowed her eyes and shook her head. "No, fat chance, little sister." The girl shrugged and laughed, recklessly, and left, apparently accustomed to hope gone awry. "How old you think?" Wooly asked, flopping back into his chair to catch his breath. "The kid? 16. Working girls," she speculated. "Ugly ones," Wooly said. "Hate to know their sad story." "Me too." But she and Wooly had lived 2 steps ahead of that story long enough to bear no malice against the poor, desperate, and savvy. It did make her want to check on her dolls, though. But she didn't. Instead, she locked the front door, withdrew the 50 from the till, stroked it on both sides, and pocketed it before shoving Wooly's walker closer to him. She popped the lid on the economy-sized Santa wipes tube and pulled out the whole wad of cold, bleach-soaked towelettes. Gingerly, pressing them against Wooly's ear, she held them in place while he rolled himself out the back door, leaning heavily on the walker. "My poor Wooly," she said, dry-eyed. No one knew how hard her heart was pounding. After he had his smoke and got himself into the van, she tossed her pillows carelessly into the back. "Let's have dinner first. We can gas up on the way home." "What about my ear?" Wooly complained. She felt his stare, she, his pint-sized wife, no get-even cushions beneath her. They both knew his ear looked worse than it was. A Band-Aid would do. He pulled his watchman's hat down low. The 2 of them looked stylish in their caps, didn't they? "Where do you want to eat, Peggy?" he asked her. When she pulled out onto the county road, she flexed her fingers and gave him that sideways look that used to thrill him.
That was great. I'm Kirk Westfall, and I'm from Boston, so from one of the other 20 states, I suppose. But it's always such a pleasure to be part of this community, and I really appreciate that. I have a few poems to read this afternoon. The first one, I asked my 11th grade English teacher if I should submit it to Dunes, and he said yes. And the cool thing is he's here too, D.R. James, and he'll be reading in just a little while, so you can blame him for whatever you think about what I'm about to read. This is called Read This Twice. Beginnings ask with fingers, clutching, coaxing, tracing, holding as to guide, but formed around the shape of water. Eyes that sweat before first contact, spin and drift, beholden to themselves and what they touch. within a sphere of imminence, portent, firm as shoulders, squaring now to their encounter. Their potency affirmed as still life in rotation and in tension. Yet hips will lead this heat dance. Pivot first, then thrust the body's leather angles into curves as smooth as wood grain, each its own expected contour of the body as a helix of desire. Fingers tighten, eyes commit the hips into gyration, spiraling to shoulders. Contact without feeling any threshold. No before, nor after, and the need itself suppresses all resistance. And so it goes. The baseball sails into forever, sphere of imminence, now permanence. To hit it is to swing clear through. This next poem is very short, but it requires a little explanation because it began life as a text message. After a recent reading here at Brilliant Books, my friend Melissa sent me a poem written by Quan Berry called Reading, and it was a reflection on the experience of sharing our work with others. And I sent her back a little text message with these words that are on this page, but not in this sequence or this order. And she re-sequenced them for me in the form that they appear today, which I thought was rather nice. I've often thought that writing requires the selection of good words, and poetry requires the placement of good words. So if you like this, she's the poet, and if you don't, I wrote this. This is called After Reading. Night took me home the long way, along the nowhere canal, beside the familiar street I cannot name, toward awareness and the eloquence of silence after speaking. And the next one is called Weight of Air. I know what it sounds like empty, how the dust and hair thistle into wafts, and find throat-dry silence in corners, the harmonic scale of the stairway, and the crick of weight bearing on the uprights, bone blackened into stumps of calcified footing. Doors cling to the ratchet ache of stolid hinges left unswung, lead paint windows welded shut by the absence of breeze in fallen rooms that gurgle in the rain as if they might be choked by it. I know what it sounds like empty, because once I heard it full. Thank you.
Hello. My name's Brandon. I'm a recent graduate from Northern Michigan University in Marquette. I'm going to be reading the last little bit of my essay. Breaking news. You are awake. You realize you have definitely heard Wolf Blitzer's voice more than your own mother's. You fall back to sleep. Regular news. It's very, very normal to pick mom off the floor now. You are getting so strong. CNN heroes. You have fallen in love. You are convinced of this. She has no dad. You buy the girl with no dad a ring. It has 2 sterling silver hearts, colored 2 shades of blue. They are intertwined. You are sitting in your room upstairs, listening to the hum of all that nothing noise your house makes, and you twist the ring back and forth in your fingers. You think about the girl's eyelashes, and then you hear that familiar slam on the floor. You are downstairs, and you pull your mom to her feet, or pull her shoulders out of her sockets, whichever comes first. And you scream in her drunk face something real clever like, "Fuck you, Mom. You love drinking more than us, and oh my God, you're gonna die like this. Mom, listen." You hiss through your teeth, wringing your hair in your fingers. I do not love you when you drink. You are very convinced of this. You are in the kitchen, and you grab the 6 half-empty bottles of vodka from the cupboard where she hides them, and you spike them in a crescendo on the floor, each one harder than the last. The glass sprays off the ground and hits the ceiling. It bounces with little tinks and thuds on the dishes and the furniture. The vodka sprays like it is pressurized. It paints your skin. It runs on the floor and rinses it a bit cleaner. You stomp back to the living room, where she sways, her eyes still flat. Wolf Blitzer says, "Over 1,200 people were injured today when a meteor broke over Chelyabinsk, Russia." You tell your mom, eyes stinging, shaking, dizzy again, that this is the last time, and that you love her, like pipelines love bursting, like America loves pop culture, like meteors love Russia. Regular news. You read the Wolf Blitzer married wiki, and it says in order, "There is no Wolf Blitzer affair found. Daughter, Ilana. She's the only child of Blitzer who was born safe and sound." This sounds as if Wolf has had multiple children, and only Ilana was born safe and sound. However, you know that this is a mistake. Wolf Blitzer is not perfect in that way. Wolf Blitzer is perfect in the way that he had one beautiful child. And that beautiful child really is gorgeous, and now has long chestnut hair and a symmetrical face and a career as the beauty editor of Family Circle magazine. You envy that, maybe. You wonder if Wolf Blitzer's patience ever snapped. You think if it did, it would be when Andy Richter beat him in Celebrity Jeopardy. But he handled that just fine. Breaking news. Dad comes home for an hour before he leaves now. If you eat meat now, it's red and you burn it. You and Nikki and Mom clean the kitchen floor and ceiling in weekly loops. You and Nikki swipe away the grime and leave bleach white circles. Mom's hands shake, and really, she's just pushing the dirt around. But the sink is empty. Everyone's blood is inside of them. Regular news. Ducks swim like this. They paddle like hell below, and look like heroes above. You and the girl with no dad watch the ducks at the boat launch. It is dusk, and you hold hands. Your fingers lock the way the scant light falls. The water parts in little waves around the duck's feathers. And you were never sure about love, but you might think, this is it.
I'm Jennifer Yates. I live here in Traverse City. And this little poem is one in a series of poems I've been working on with similar titles. My Heart as, insert something, like a lightning struck tree or a Great Lake. This is My Heart as transistor radio. Static on the dial. We found the station once. Once we located the transmitter. You are bringing me a bowl of white currants. You have hidden a caramel in my desk drawer. Modulate the charge. The signal is the message. We named the frequency once. Once, we broadcast simultaneously.
I'm Maddie Gardner, and I'll just be reading my one poem, Sirens. When sirens rose at 7 a.m., apartment doors cracked, and tenants like aphids lined the lawn. They saw her lying in the spring grass, Pima sundress and prima donna thighs, her shoulders and kneecaps bald, like brown eggs left on the counter. I remember the sprinklers climbing up in pegs, men lifting her up on the canvas, a boy pressed to the window, hot breath, May fog.
Hello, everyone. My name's Rob Astor, and I'm going to give you a progress report. Where? On the steel floor, beneath the bright light. Nude, sir. curled up in a ball. And is he willing to renounce them all? Yes, sir. Well, all but one. Give me the transcript. The last sunset we ever saw, golden in the spools of her dark hair, the taste of sea between her ribs, a silhouette edged in peach light, features now obscured, contours worn down. All that's left is sand. It's moondust, sir. Moondust, the fool. Have him executed immediately. We tried. It seems like he's only an apparition. Curious. Can't you shut him up? That's just it, sir. He rather enjoys the interrogations.
I'm going to read a poem by poet and novelist Ace Bogus from West Virginia. And Ace writes lots of poems that respond to questions, and he finds them everywhere. And so this question was found on a religious leaflet. Do you think of yourself as a winner? I put my law degree to use in prison, which must have made my old professors proud. They gave me something valuable, unquantifiable. I earned a few parentheticals and footnotes of release, leaving my steel bunk behind like a hermit crab's improvised Coke can shell, trading it for a room with books, hinting at technology. I listened to hard men, angry, almost crying, explaining their problems with the affection one might have for a third arm or vestigial tail. I knew the answers, could see the future as if on a movie screen, watching the hero die again and again.
Hi, my name's Monica Rico, and this is my poem called Tercero de Muerte, and it's a poem I wrote about bullfighting. My grandfather worked in Mexico for a really long time, and he had these really great stories, all of them neat. His cigarette at rest is more ash than smoke that is slow to crawl over the body of a dead bull whose blood is its last spill of light. The mouth parts for breath out of habit. Who dares to pull the collected carnations from the horns? How long is a prayer, opened and fragrant, as a petal lost above the red that waits for a cool taste of beer?
Hi, I'm Melissa Fournier, reading for Jan Schumacher, who could not be here in person today. The atomic weight of wonder. Hydrogen is lightest. A moth in the periodic table, fluttering near the porch lamp in the high left corner. She gets around, plays well with others. The flirt. Her light liaisons, crucial to those heavy animals whose thought she fuels. Thought lifting in wonder, weighted, weightless, its untraceable grace right off the chart. A nuclear nothing, clapping with one hand.
Hi, my name is Kate, and my poem is called RN 86. RN is radon. I come from decay, the pieces my never siblings left behind, salvaged from two and made Gemini. Everyone calls me an old soul, as if I've existed billions of years, but I die all the time, a chain of breakdowns like the ones before.
Hello. Thanks, Tanya et al. Appreciate you doing this, and welcome. Hello from Saugatuck. I happen to be the old guy English teacher that inspired Kirk. I love claiming that every time. So this one has a weird title, almost as long as a couple of the verses, and it also has a last line that I have no idea what it means. So fill in the blank. Lines concocted while waiting to catch a certain bent blue note in Jimi Hendrix's second guitar solo of Voodoo Child's Slight Return, recorded live at London's Albert Hall, February 24th, 1969. Anything could happen this winter, in the frail rise and fall, the lonely moans of a landscape no longer muscly with growth. To start something new will require a sort of slackening, a giving way when the knife of wind takes its first and second swipes and the low-slung sun paints a neon sky, rays oozing around clouds in a hurry. A black limb above the porch will sport its sculpted snow boa, puffed fuselage for the butterfly of spring. All those hawks who once mounted high thermals will send love from Guatemala. The tagging and detagging of presents will come and go. Fields will go all brown. The attic will reclaim the decorations I'm to cart there, and optimism will seem a stretch, like when pristine stone won't detonate.
I'm Cal Freeman. I'm in town from Dearborn. Thanks, Tanya, and everybody at Dunes Review for including this poem. This poem's called Fight Song of the Pleco. A lot of times plecos are used as algae eaters in fish tanks. Murky water at the leach of dawn. My teeth like pebbles at the bottom of the tank. Nautical-themed ceramics. I'm a mute sucker rasping at green glass. Loose gums pressed and swollen, tasked with cleaning the scabrous wall so all the precious ones can leer at us.
Hi, my name's Keith Taylor. It's nice to see and hear read people who I know primarily from Facebook. So real live human beings. Two tiny little poems to end on. This is from a series that I'm doing for yet another chapbook. This chapbook will be called Ecstatic Destinations. My two rules in this chapbook that I'm doing now is that they all take place in my constitutional walk around my neighborhood in Ann Arbor, which is a triangle of 1.5 miles, and that I write them all outside. So, en plein air, like the French painters. Who knows if it makes a difference, but it's kind of fun. This one's called Vet's Pool, the Deep End Test. Swim 2 laps across the pool. Hold your breath for 45 seconds, completely submerged. Tread water for 5 full minutes without grabbing the edge. Then they'll put you on the list. Those imperious lifeguards who smile only toward each other about the good season they're having in their lanky summer bodies. And they'll leave you begrudging, unironic permission to swim out over your head whenever you want. This one, tiny, just to remember when there was the writing, when God wrote on the wall in Babylon, it was the king was Belshazzar, And of course, it was a prophecy of doom that only the prophet Daniel could interpret. And that's longer than the poem. At Belshazzar's feast, hoping to save ourselves from the Medes and Persians, we offer prayers that we might understand again the elegance and purpose of jet trails across our cerulean skies. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy.